Well, friends, it finally happened. The pathologically lying fraud and freshman Republican Congressman George Santos has been officially, formally expelled from the United States House of Representatives, and his MAGA allies are furious, as are right wing media commentators. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks, a bad day for MAGA is a great day for the United States and for the Democratic Party, whose minority in the House of Representatives is now down to 3 seats. There's just a 3-seat margin separating the chaotic and dysfunctional and incompetent House Republicans from the House Democratic minority. But here's what happened. We're going to watch the gaveling itself. The final vote was 311 to 114 to expel George Santos.
On this vote, the yeas are 311, the nays are 114, with 2 recorded as present. 2/3 voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted, and a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The clerk will notify the governor of the state of New York of the action of the House. Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the chair announces to the House that in light of the expulsion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Santos, the whole number of the House is now 434.
It's great to see the despair and disappointment on Mike Johnson's face. He was one of the many Republicans who voted to not expel George Santos. And so it's, again, the schadenfreude here is glorious. The sadness on his face is just exquisite. So in the aftermath of the expulsion, apparently even before the final vote was officially gavelled, George Santos walked out of the chamber before the vote was finished, descending the House steps to a waiting car. Mr. Santos told reporters he was ready to turn the page on Congress. "Why would I want to stay here?" he said. "To hell with this place." And then he left, which is glorious. Now, before we get into, again, the schadenfreude and the despair, because there's so much to unpack here, Santos's MAGA allies are furious, and so are Fox News commentators and other right-wing commentators, and we have to savor it. It's always good to bask in the misery of the political opposition, especially when they're as terrible as MAGA is. So people ask, okay, what happens? Well, George Santos is a representative from a district in New York, which is a blue state, run by a blue Democratic governor, Kathy Hochul. So the question is, what happens to his seat? So the first opportunity will be a special election to fill the seat through January 2025. New York Governor Kathy Hochul must announce the date of the special election within 10 days, and the election must take place 70 to 80 days after that. Instead of holding typical primaries, county party leaders will choose the candidates for the special election. The winner of that race will finish Santos's term. So that's what happens. Now, again, historically speaking, the seat that Santos occupied was occupied by a Democrat. So I expect more than likely it will go back to a Democrat, especially since they have plenty to work with. They can say, listen, not only is the House Republican majority so incompetent and dysfunctional, but the guy who previously occupied the seat was a liar and a fraud, such that 80% of his own constituents wanted to for him to resign all the way back in January. So Democrats have a pretty compelling case to make. They're like, listen, the last time a Republican was entrusted in the seat until quite recently, it was just an absolute clown show. So why don't you put it back in the hands, voters, of Democrats? Now, in terms of what got so many Republicans to vote against, or excuse me, to vote in favor of expelling Santos, it wasn't just the recent Ethics Committee complaint, which basically the assessment of the Ethics Committee report was that Santos did indeed commit all kinds of fraud and was guilty of all kinds of corruption. But Max Miller, who is an Ohio Republican congressman, apparently sent this email out to all House Republicans. He said, late yesterday on the floor, I alluded to a personal impact of Representative Santos's conduct. Earlier this year, I learned that Santos's campaign had charged my personal credit card and the personal credit card of my mother for contribution amounts that exceeded FEC limits. Neither my mother nor I approved these charges or were made aware of them. We have spent tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees in the resulting follow-up. I've seen a list of roughly 400 other people to whom the Santos campaign allegedly did this. I believe some other members of the conference might have had the same experience. While I understand and respect the position of those who vote against the expulsion resolution, my personal experience related to the allegations and the finding of the Ethics Committee compels me to vote for the resolution. Since I alluded to this on the floor yesterday, and because of the significance of the question before us, I believe you're entitled to this further explanation for my position. And reportedly, that played a huge role in allowing Republicans to vote for his expulsion. Now, those who voted to protect Santos were the entire Republican leadership. So you have Mike Johnson, the Speaker. You have Steve Scalise, the number 2. You have Elise Stefanik, number 3. And then you have Tom Emmer. So all 4 of the major Republican leaders of the House Republican Conference voted to protect this guy. Just an absolute abdication of duty. Now, there were actually 2 Democrats who voted to keep George Santos in Congress, and that was Bobby Scott and Nikema Williams. Okay. Now let's get to the delicious, beautiful, exquisite, tasty schadenfreude from the right-wing media apparatus as well as Santos's fellow MAGA Republicans.
I don't know if you heard Congresswoman Kamek, but she said majority down to 2. I mean, this is a situation for Republicans, and she said the vote was not political, but it's hard not to have the politics right staring you in the face.
Well, this is one of those things you got to do what's right. But you know what? If this is the standard, how come they're not having this vote on Adam Schiff or Eric Swalwell?
So why aren't
people
they?
On the Intel committee? I don't know why. What they were on the Intel committee misrepresenting multiple times classified information. Nothing happened to them. They didn't even lose their ability to have a.
And you can see where it goes from here. Jason and, I'm blanking on her name, Harris Faulkner, they just whine for the next 2 minutes about the fact that, why isn't this done to Democrats? Well, no Democrat has actually been credibly accused of the things like George Santos has done. They also complain. They have the audacity to complain about Bob Menendez, a Democratic senator, so a completely different chamber. But actually, Democrats, many, many, many Democrats have openly called for his expulsion since the federal indictment was made against him months ago, right? So Democrats have been much more consistent in holding their own accountable and calling for the holding of their own to be accountable than the Republicans who delayed. I mean, there have been credible allegations and indictments made both domestically and internationally, against George Santos for months, and Republicans were content to protect him because of that razor-thin majority. So once again, it is simply a fact to anyone who may be watching and kind of on the fence. The moral superiority of House Democrats over House Republicans and the Democratic Party in general over the Republican Party is simply unquestionable. Now we have Byron Donalds, who's one of the most extreme MAGA Republicans in the House of Representatives. He's very upset as well. So this is what he has to say in the aftermath of the vote.
So let's watch.
Changes from precedent. It changes the very nature by which this institution is supposed to function. We've been lectured politically for the last 4 years, a lot of it in the press, about our institutions. What happened here today goes against the principles of our institutions. It does. And people can say whatever they want. Oh, it's OnlyFans, it's this, it's that. It's bigger than what he was accused of. My angst is not about what George was accused of. It's not, because I'm not defending it. It is about the process upon which he was expelled today. That is my concern.
Do you think leadership could have done more?
Yes.
What exactly?
I'm going to leave it at that because
There you go. So again, and actually before I note the double standard here, because they want to complain about double standards, well, there is actually a tangible double standard here with the Republicans, but we'll get to that in a minute. So Marjorie Taylor Greene was also furious. Now, I don't have a live clip of her. I wish I did, because those are just always rewarding. So she issued this screed on Twitter. She says, Republicans refuse to impeach any of the Democrats who are responsible for destroying our country and have so far thrown out a Republican speaker and now expelled a Republican member. We now have a 3-seat majority and have another Republican resigning soon, and we'll have a 2-seat majority as long as every Republican shows up when we're in session. Republican voters want us to stop the communist Democrats' agenda and hold Democrats accountable, not destroy our majority and do nothing to hold Democrats accountable. Shameful. She's very upset. Chaya, I'm going to butcher her name. It's the Libs of TikTok. She is furious too. They won't expel Swalwell, Schiff, Omar, Tlaib, Bowman for actual treason, but they'll expel Santos. This is why we lose. I'm so sick of cowardly and spineless Republicans. Then you have Joey Manorino. Adam Schiff lied to the entire nation. It cost us millions. Not expelled. Ilhan Omar laughed about 9/11 and supports Hamas. Not expelled. Rashida Tlaib is basically a member of Hamas. Not expelled. Eric Swalwell allegedly screwed a Chinese spy for years. Not expelled. Jamal Bowman interfered with an official proceeding by pulled a fire alarm and was charged. Not expelled. George Santos told some lies on his resume and spent $400,000 on OnlyFans. Expelled. Really? Okay then. Well, the problem was those were campaign contributions. It was illegal. He didn't spend $400,000 of his own money. Otherwise, nobody should care. So obviously, that's a complete misrepresentation of the entire list there. But I love, again, the rage. And then, of course, Benny Johnson. Republicans won't impeach Mayorkas. Won't defund any part of the Biden regime, won't fund Trump's wall, won't investigate voter fraud, won't investigate the FBI, won't defend J6 political prisoners, will vote to expel a Republican fabulist because the media tells them to. Cowards. So, folks, again, the glorious rage of the Republicans is always good. It should nurture us. It should feed us. It is an energy source to be harnessed when and where appropriate. Now, as far as the double standard is concerned, I'll say this. They're so upset about expelling a federally indicted and internationally indicted fraud, a guy whose lies have been verifiably proven, a guy whose lies are so egregious that 80% of his own constituents wanted him to resign as far back as January. And he even lost the support eventually, when they could no longer stand it, of many of his fellow Republicans. But they're so upset that he's expelled. Meanwhile, they want to impeach and remove the President of the United States for infinitely less evidence against him. As a matter of fact, that was too generous, because that suggests that they have evidence against President Biden in the first place. That's why they're moving the goalposts. The Biden crime family, Hunter Biden, the James Biden. So they're happy. They're eager to get rid of Biden for an infinitesimal fraction of the evidence, which happens to be against people who are not Biden, Hunter Biden and James Biden. See the double standard there. At the end of the day, House Republicans are much more cynical than Democrats and much less principled. All they want to do is maintain their power and their majority, a shrinking majority at that. So anyway, it's good news. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you found the outrage of Republicans and right-wing media as gratifying as I did. Let me know what you think.